You are a grown-ass man. You can do this. You will not cry.
The world never stops turning. That statement is one of the most comforting truths and horrifying facts of the world. It's comforting to know that, no matter how bad things get in our lives, tomorrow will come, and with the sunrise, a new set of possibilities will come to us to make things better. But it's also scary to know that, when things are at the worst, and we just need a break to collect ourselves, that break won't come. The world doesn't stop spinning for personal tragedy. Everyone deals with loss and sadness. No one can coast through life on nothing but the high road, and learning to deal with that is an important skill for life. But some people don't have that strength to keep moving. Some people cling to what's already gone to the point that they themselves become lost, and they can't accept that the world has moved on without them. Case in point, Lyon from Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. Lyon is mentioned a few times in Sacred Stones' early chapters, mostly stated as someone who's a friend to Eirika and Ephraim, which makes the fact that his dad invaded their kingdom kinda awkward. He makes his proper debut in a flashback after the first third of the game, in a scene where Eirika, Ephraim, and Lyon are discussing what they're going to pray for at a holy flame. The scene does a very good job at making their friendship very believable, which is a very important step for them to rip out your heart and spit on it later on. Let's see. I guess I'll pray to become a stronger fighter. That's just like you, Ephraim. Just like you indeed, brother. I can never tell if you're complimenting me or mocking me. Praising you, of course. Right, Eirika? Yes, that's right. And you, Lyon? What will you pray for? What? Me? I suppose all I really want is for our people to be happy. That's very much like you. Very much so, Lyon. Now I'm the one who can't tell if he's being praised or... Lyon and the twins feel like genuine friends. They tease and poke fun at one another, but it's clear there's also a genuine love and respect for one another. A lot of stories that want to elicit sympathy like this say things like X and Y were once friends, but won't elaborate on that, so such connections don't resonate with the player as much as the story wants them to. Lyon benefits from the game showing their friendship, not just saying that it exists, so it feels less like they're just making him nice, so you cry when things go wrong for him, even if that is 100% what they're doing. The flashback also establishes the fact that Lyon suffers from self-doubt, as he sees how hard it is to rule from watching the physical and mental toll ruling the nation takes on his father, and he wonders if he can live up to that. His love for his father is also directly stated by Ephraim, as he remarks that Lyon worships his father, and wouldn't dare to speak up to him about the whole conquering Renee thing. The flashback sets up multiple facets of Lyon's character that gets explored later, and it also manages to create a likable connection to the main lords. One little scene packs a hell of a punch. Now, how Lyon is presented the rest of the game changes greatly depending on whether the player chooses to do Eirika's route or Ephraim's route, so let's just start with Eirika's. In it, Lyon is not mentioned until the end of the route, where Eirika learns that Lyon is in charge of the assault on Johanna's castle, and Eirika's pretty shocked to hear this. She reminisces of a time 2 years ago where she and Lyon were sparring in swordplay, and Eirika defeats him rather easily. Lyon laments over his lack of physical strength, feeling as though his weakness and frail body will lead him to be shunned by his people and make him unfit to rule. Eirika gives him a little pep talk, saying that his kindness is an asset, and that an emperor needs that too, and it gives Lyon a small boost in his confidence to believe that there has to be things he can do without strength. This scene shows more of the bond Lyon and Eirika share, and also reaffirms his self-doubt, giving him an example of losing a battle to show genuine weakness, which is relevant to him. Snapping back to the present, Lyon is with his general Kalik, trying to get Queen Ismare of Johanna to reveal the location of the Sacred Stone. After she tells them to fuck off in the most dignified way possible, Kalik decides to just axe her off, and though Lyon protests, Kalik's orders comes from the king, so he just stabs her. Lyon attempts to heal her, but with the enemy army looking for them, Lyon has no choice but to retreat alongside Kalik, though he does manage to squeeze in one moment with Eirika alone. He makes sure to tell her that he was sorry for the Renee invasion, blaming himself for being too weak to stop it, but saying that he and Eirika were always friends, no matter what happens. He also flirts with Eirika a bit, praising her beauty, which, I mean, it's a weird time to shoot your shot, but I can't really crucify a man for trying. These scenes show that Lyon is still the kind man that Eirika thinks he is. His heart is gentle, but also his self-doubts are still there as well, painting him as a tragic figure in a messed up situation. But the legitimacy of Lyon's words is questioned once Eirika reunites with Ephraim, as her brother paints a picture of Lyon that is a stark contrast to what Eirika saw. He says that Lyon mocked them. He boasted that he killed the twins' father, and that their years of friendship were merely a ruse to this end. He says that Lyon's father was dead all along, and his corpse was merely used as a puppet by Lyon, making the whole invasion directly Lyon's doing. Ephraim says that Lyon changed once he got an item called the Darkstone, and it doesn't take a mage to realize that its magic is fucking with him somehow. Something is controlling Lyon. This seems to be supported in later scenes depicting him as having an illness. Given the context, it's obvious he's not fighting a common cold, but some kind of presence like Ephraim says. Before this question is answered though, Lyon gets one more flashback, depicting him describing his research into the dark arts and his usage of Grotto's Sacred Stone. His excited explanation reveals several things. First, that his intentions are nothing but pure, wishing only to use his magic to heal his father's illness, and from there, any other illness he can learn to cure. It also shows that his research has gotten success. He tells a story of how he saved a little girl from burns that were so severe, not even healing staves could heal her, but the stone amplified Lyon's magic and he was able to pull it off. But it also establishes that he is warned by many people not to use the stone. The stone contains godly powers, and fucking with it could lead to repercussions far beyond anyone's understanding. But Lyon so earnestly believes in helping people that he's pressing on in his research regardless of the warnings, and Eirika and Ephraim encourage his kindness, which tragically ends up leading to his downfall. Because when his father warned him that fucking with the Sacred Stone could have drastic repercussions, Lyon runs into that drastic repercussion, the Demon King Mortis. The stone holds the power of an ancient demon, and Lyon bit off a bit too much of that power, and his body ended up becoming the puppet for old DK, hence Lyon's transformation that Ephraim described. When the twins finally meet Lyon together, Ephraim brings up the cruelty he showed him, and at first, Lyon is confused by Ephraim, as if he had no recollection of the events that Ephraim is describing. Eirika tries to talk to Lyon, but he yells at her to get away from him as he starts to scream out in agony, with the power of the Demon King starting to take him entirely. This scene is important because it establishes Lyon trying to fight the Demon King's power. He's failing, miserably, but he's definitely trying. Once he has control, Mortis tries to have a little fun, trying to convince the twins that Lyon always hated them and that he was pure evil from the very start. Eirika and Ephraim obviously buy none of that bullshit, and so Mortis decides to reveal himself properly, exposing himself as the true mastermind of all the bullshit that's happened in the game. He shows great delight in the fact that he's twisting Lyon's wishes, saying that the prince always wanted to crush Ephraim, that he always wanted to take Eirika for himself, and he is promptly defeated because dark magic tomes are way too heavy for Lyon's little noodle arms. He gets away, and this scene mainly establishes Mortis as a sadistic dick, which, I mean, when his name is the Demon King, that really should have been expected. Now that Fomortis reveals himself, Eirika starts with her next objective, freeing Lyon from his grasp and returning his soul to him. So she asks Larchel for help, and Larchel tells Eirika the truth, that Lyon is fucking doomed, and she should just give up and kill him, because once someone's soul is eaten by the Demon King, it's far too gone. Eirika obviously doesn't want to give up on Lyon, and so she gives him the Sacred Stone. Since she saw him fighting back against the Demon King earlier, she thinks that maybe the power of the magic MacGuffin rock can make him strong enough to win. But sadly, she should have listened to Larchel. Lyon is doomed, and not even the stone can save him, and Fomortis destroys it, mocking Eirika for believing in someone as weak as Lyon. He then spares Eirika, only because he sees how much Lyon's agony is making her suffer, and he thinks Eirika's pain is just the funniest goddamn thing, so he wants her to continue to live and continue to show him her misery. This scene's main purpose is to show Eirika, and by extension the player, that Lyon is too gone, and this causes Eirika to break down and cry, which, same girl, same. Eirika's sorrow is perfectly felt by the player, because they've seen the real Lyon for the entire game. Because his motives and his relationships were so well established, the player feels for his failure, and is saddened by the fact that he can't be saved. It doesn't feel like some phoned-in sad scene to make him sympathetic. Lyon genuinely is easy to feel sorry for, which is a big part of why his character is so fondly remembered. We just wanted him to be happy, and the truth is that he won't be. In fact, he really won't be. Fomortis says that the only reason it even looked like Lyon was fighting back was because he willingly left Lyon a shred of awareness so he could witness Eirika getting killed by him. I never realized it before making this video, but the Demon King is a sadistic bitch. Like, he makes Volter look like a saint. How do you manage that? Lyon's final flashback depicts the last time he and Eirika met, when they were bidding each other farewell as Eirika went back to Renee after a visit to Grotto. He tells her that, whenever he wanted to give in and accept he wasn't enough, it was Eirika's encouragement that kept him going, that it was her kindness that drove him. It's very obvious he has romantic feelings for her, but ultimately he can't bring himself to admit them, and the flashback ends with him saying that he will one day be the great emperor Eirika believes him to be capable of. In the present day, Lyon again apologizes to Eirika about being too weak to stop things, saying that the Demon King took over natural desires Lyon had, and that Lyon accepted the Demon King's false promises. This aspect of his character isn't really explored much on Eirika's route, but it's important to remember that for when Ephraim's route starts. And at the end of it all, Eirika does kill Lyon, and with his final breath, Lyon finally admits his love to Eirika. Good job, man! You got there eventually. All it took was 37 stab wounds. Lyon in Eirika's route is very sympathetic. You feel for his pain, and because of that, you feel for Eirika's pain at the fact that he has to die. Lyon's character drives the story of the game. Because the player wanted to see him happy, they kept playing the game, hopeful for that happy ending that never came. If all he had was Eirika's route, he would be an effective, tragic character, who every player wished could be saved. But at the same time, there were still questions. Why did Lyon have such pitiful self-esteem, and what drove him to seek the Demon King's power? Ephraim Rout's portrayal of Lyon answers those questions, while posing a new one. The Route asks, what if Lyon deserved all the suffering that he got? See, in Ephraim's Route, Lyon is presented as a much less trustworthy figure. Very early on, the fact that Lyon was the one who started the war is presented, though Ephraim doubts it. Like Eirika's route, Lyon appears in a flashback towards the end of the split. In it, Lyon's admiration of Ephraim is outlined. He wishes he was as handsome and as brave as Ephraim was. The flashback's point is to both show how much Ephraim and Lyon get along, but to also sow the seeds of what would eventually be revealed as the jealousy that Lyon harbors. From there, the events described in Eirika's route take place, with the obviously possessed Lyon talking mad shit about everything and mocking Ephraim. What changes is that Ephraim meets Noel, the one man in the entire game who actually knows what the fuck is going on, and he starts to explain. 1 year prior to the game, Lyon's father Vegard died due to illness, and this blow devastated Lyon. And so, he looked for the power of the Sacred Stone of Grotto to gain the magic to bring his father back to life. And in doing so, he came into contact with Femortis, and you know how that went. Now possessed, Lyon began acting to the Demon King's will, attempting to destroy the sacred stones of the land so that the king could rise to his full demonic might. Now before we move on, I want to elaborate on this motive for a bit, because it's a bit more complex and interesting than just boo-hoo dead parents. For starters, the shoes Lyon had to fill may as well have been Sora's massive clown shoes, because Vegard was an outstanding man. Selena's backstory was all about him riding in to save a town that was so poor it couldn't afford to pay taxes, all because they needed help and he was kind enough to give it to them. Cormag and Glenn's backstory depicts Vegard as a man who invited peasant farmers to the dinner table of a king, simply because they were kind boys who were trying to help him. Simply put, Vegard is portrayed as a near saint, always listening to the complaints of the people and striving to do whatever he can to help them whenever they need him. And here Lyon comes with that act to follow. How can he not be afraid? How can he not doubt his ability to pick up after a reign that loved and benevolent? To add on top of that, remember Lyon's frail body and his poor health. Physically, Lyon is a very weak man. And remember that Vegard's death was of poor health. Poor health almost certainly caused by stress. As Lyon put it in a flashback, "One thing I do know from watching my father is that being emperor is hard. Every day he answers the complaints of the people, and he almost never sleeps. My father is always so very tired." Considering Lyon's fragility, how could he not be terrified of the future? How could he think that he could handle the stress and weight of a kingdom when he can't even fight properly? Lyon's self-doubts are handled very well. His desperation to save his father is very easily understood. So yes, tapping into the power of a demon lord is indeed a really fucking stupid move, but it's not a move that makes you hit your head against your Game Boy Advance and go, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Other than revealing Lyon's full backstory and his reason for delving into the stone, Ephraim's portrayal of him remains largely the same as Eirika's, until the scene in Chapter 18. In it, Lyon appears as himself, claiming the whole thing about being possessed by the Demon King was a little lie, and that he's really in control the whole time. Now, that statement is very much a lie, one that Lyon is telling both Ephraim and himself, as it's clear multiple times throughout Ephraim's route that he's just as possessed as he was in Eirika's. But what's interesting is we hear more of Lyon's feelings towards the twins, and the player learns it wasn't all positive. "Listen, Ephraim. I've always loved you. I've always hated you. I've always looked up to you. I wanted to be just like you. Then one day, I realized someone like me could never become someone like you. You and Eirika are overpowering. You blinded me with your radiance. How could I live in your shadows and not seethe with jealousy?" This is what Lyon was talking about at the end of Eirika's route. These were the dark feelings Lyon said the Demon King unearthed. For behind his respect and admiration of Ephraim, there was also jealousy and rage. Behind his love and devotion to Eirika, there was lust and desire. Lyon isn't a pure good man. He holds dark emotions in his heart, and some anger at Ephraim. For example, remember that Lyon's ascension to Emperor weighed heavy on his mind for years. The weight of that task governed nearly every action Lyon took. His birthright was very important to him. And then look at Ephraim. He wanted to pawn off all of his responsibilities to Eirika, just so he could live life as a mercenary running around as a vagabond. How do you think that made Lyon feel? To see Ephraim so nonchalant about something that eats away at Lyon every moment. Ephraim can crack jokes that Phaedo will outlive him, and yet Vagard's health worsens every day. It's easy to see how Lyon could fester rage, even if he loved Ephraim even still. Another thing is that Lyon wasn't just mad at Ephraim. In a way, he was mad at the world too. Null supports reveal that in Magvel, dark magic is looked down upon, being seen as innately evil magic that shouldn't be practiced. And even when their research into the dark arts yielded fruit, like the little girl's burns I talked about earlier, they were still shunned by society. As such, Lyon, Null, and the other researchers were all motivated by spite, at least at some level. They wanted what was best for the people, sure, but they were also bitter at the shame they faced for their research. As such, it's a fact that Lyon also held a grudge against the world. He had a vendetta to prove himself, to prove his magic was not a wicked source of evil to be feared. And so, it was those feelings of jealousy and anger that the Demon King latched onto, twisting Lyon's genuine frustrations into horrid actions. But while Lyon says he's himself in Ephraim's route, it's made clear that he's just as lost and twisted as he was in Eirika's, as when Lyon confronts the dragon Morva, Morva basically shit-talks him and calls him out for his delusions. You think yourself unchanged. You think yourself the master. I see only more evidence that the Demon King commands you now. Can you not sense it's not true? I will save everyone. Think back. Remember, are you truly the man you used to be? Would you justify war and murder to bring about peace and justice? Remember who you were, and tell me if you are still yourself. All of this matters not. I know the Demon King has claimed me. It is not important. Not if I can save the world. My own soul is irrelevant. This conversation is there to establish that Lyon, even if he were to be in control, did not head down a path he had any right to. This is further fleshed out by a flashback showing the moment of Vagard's death, explaining that the reason Lyon didn't feel like he could rule without his father was that he saw an impending disaster that would wipe out a good chunk of Grotto. I explained this a lot in my Null video, but basically a giant earthquake is going to come crashing down, and things are going to get really bad really quickly for Grotto. With this threat looking him down, Lyon went to the Sacred Stone, and this flashback also lets us know that Null tried his hardest to stop him, putting more fault on Lyon and reminding us that he willingly ignored the counsel of everyone around him to pursue the path that he did. But that was because he was so caught up in what he lacked. Strength, confidence, he was too keenly aware of his banes and not his boons. Because yes, Lyon was weak, he did struggle to believe in himself, but he was also super smart, and he was super kind. He just didn't have faith in those traits. In the final chapter, Ephraim reminds him of this, because while Lyon looked up to Ephraim's strength and confidence, Ephraim admired his intelligence and love. You know, Ephraim, I always wanted to be you. I wanted to be strong and handsome, with Eirika always at my side. That's what I wanted to be. I had nothing. Don't be ridiculous, Lyon. Who was it that taught me history? Who covered for me when I stumbled? Didn't you see how I looked up to you? I admired your compassion, your wisdom, your thoughtfulness. Ultimately, Lyon had the makings of a great emperor. If he just believed in himself, if he saw in himself the things Eirika and Ephraim saw, he had a great future. But because of a non-stop stream of bad timing, bad luck, bad choices, he was never going to see that in himself. The path of destruction he left was ultimately his own fault. He couldn't accept that life existed past his father, and because of that, he went down a dark road from which there was no return. And as relatable as his actions were, they were still the actions of a coward. The end of Lyon's life can be a reminder to us to look at what good we have, because even if we can't see our good sides, that doesn't mean they're not there and that others can't. After talking about what Lyon has done and why he did it, I want to discuss how those actions tie into the theme of the greater narrative Sacred Stones has, the themes of loss I talked about at the beginning of the video. See, in Sacred Stones, characters are dealing with loss and grief constantly. It's a major theme of the game, and something almost everyone important goes through. What separates the heroes from the villains is not that the heroes are pure hearts who never lost anything, it's how they deal with it and move on with their lives. For example, Eirika lost her father, and once learning this, she didn't try to revive him with the Demon Stone, she turned to saving Ephraim, because that was something she needed to do. When Garcia lost his wife, he didn't give in to despair, he focused on raising his son into a good boy with good morals, because that was something he needed to do. When Joshua lost his mother, he didn't crumble under the pressure of having to rule Johanna. He embraced it and dedicated himself to ruling it, because that's what he needed to do. The heroes constantly faced adversity, but didn't let it break them. To quote Eirika's epilogue, "No matter how it hurts, or rather because it hurts, we must learn to accept sorrow. We must take it into our hearts and tame our grief." Now look at how the villains dealt with loss. None of them ever considered moving on with their lives. They were all dedicated to the memory of better times. Selena saw that her beloved emperor was gone, but rather than accept that and find a new cause to devote herself to like Dussel, she stood by her old life to the death. Orson didn't try to find someone or something else to love when his wife died. Instead, he gave in to despair and madness, accepting a fake lover because he was too far gone to notice or too far gone to care. And Lyon, well, you understand what he did. Sacred Stones' main point is the importance of moving on after loss, and accepting it as a fact of life. Because yes, life has many hardships, and many people and things will be lost. But you can't just give up. You have to keep moving to find the good things the future will one day bring. Lyon's story is a message about being willing to let go and move on, and seeing Eirika and Ephraim do that in regards to Lyon is an important story. What Lyon's death represents to an individual could be anything. It could be literal. Someone could relate to the pain of death of a person or a pet that they lost. It could just be the loss of a friend, either due to opinions on things changing over time, or a physical change in distance that renders the bond weaker than it used to be. It could be a memory of a time in our lives, a job we liked or a house we liked living in that we had to leave behind because life took us in a different direction. Regardless of what someone has lost in their life, Lyon's story can be something that speaks to them. The feelings of loss are universal, and as such, Lyon is as well. But the other point Lyon brings to the table is no matter how the loss happened, be it a bitter breakup or a calm parting, that the love you felt wasn't wasted. Lyon did a lot wrong and deserved his fate, but that never stopped Eirika and Ephraim from loving him, because he was their friend. He was someone they loved. No matter how cold we may feel to friends and family we lost, it's true that we loved them at one point, and if life takes them down a path you can't walk, that doesn't mean the memories with them should be tainted as if something was wrong. It just means that they're that, memories for happier time, and in the present, your happy times are just with others. It's that point that Sacred Stones ends on. The final scene of the game is a flashback depicting Eirika, Ephraim, and Lyon's first meeting. It's reminding us that no matter what happens between loved ones, regardless of if a split is the fault of one, both, or neither party, that the love was there isn't something that has to go away. It's just a weight you have to walk with. Oh, are you? My name is Lyon. Uh-huh, that's me, the son of the Emperor. You're Prince Ephraim and Princess Eirika from Renee, aren't you? I heard you were coming. I've been waiting here all day. I've always wanted... I don't have any friends my own age. So, Prince Ephraim, Princess Eirika, what do you say? From now on, let's be friends. Oh, come on, this is hardly the time for a Patreon advertisement. Oh, who am I kidding? It's the perfect time for a Patreon advertisement. That's right! For as little as $3 a month, you can get access to benefits like sneak previews of panels for videos, and also, if you want to shell out the big bucks, you can vote on polls for future videos. Right now, it's a battle of axe dudes, and Alois is having an early lead, but hey, anything can happen. My patrons include the likes of Andrew Crockett, Atomic X160, Benz Again, Dr. McBackstab, Elizabeth Von SR, Fire Emblem Lord, Follow Penta the North Star on Twitch, Gallade Knight, Great Riek, Green Brigand, Hell on Heelys, Justpacito 2, Keithan, Lightning Bolt, Memi, Nevrix the Fallen Shield Guy, Ranger Man Sam, Ryan Walter, Shen Lu, Space1255, Steph D, Tato, Tiny Squids, Your Girl Olwyn, Anti-Ginger, Brentendo11, Drew Hack, Kazu Foxfire, Mathematicus, and Max. Thank you all for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one. I would like to thank you for making it to the end of another character analysis video. Lyon's my favorite character in the series, so the fact that I finally did him is... can't believe it. As always, I would like to thank the Green Brigand for his support, looking over the script, making sure I'm not saying anything too crazy. Thanks for all the help, man. I always appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider joining the Discord, links in the description, as well as liking the video, commenting on the video, subscribing, ringing the bell for notifications, subscribing to the Patreon, and take a look at this cool little plush my buddy got me for my birthday. I just think it's neat. Until next time.
Change the world. My final message. Goodbye.